Is he recording?
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. I was thrust into this one unprepared, as always. Kind of kidding. I have two people who I always enjoy speaking with, and hopefully people enjoy listening to. I tend to get good feedback from these shows, but I bring them on selfishly, not so much because of the audience. So it's kind of an honor and a pleasure that you guys also enjoy the people we have on today, which is Cann and Justin Hawley. Kevin, obviously, of Precision Powerlifting. Justin of Willpower Weightlifting. We've done a couple shows in the past. One that actually just released, what artificial intelligence coaching is missing, which kind of people got up in arms about. Is it actually coaching? Is it just programming? So that's a distinction probably for another show. We also did a couple before that, so you guys can just search that in Spotify, iTunes, any other podcasting platform if you'd like to listen to it. But today, I thought we'd kind of build on it and continue the series, not so much on AI or developing athletes, but more so like what are the habits of highly effective coaches? There's been a lot written about highly effective habits for athletes and how you can best develop your performance, be it through improved nutrition, improved training methods, etc. But with coaches, I feel like there's kind of this distinction that's often kept in the team sport realm, and maybe like some of the more popular individual sports. So I know, Kevin, you've read a lot of stuff and you share a lot of stuff from John Wooden, other coaches, Vince Lombardi. I actually just listened to a book by James Kerr talking about the All Blacks. So coaches who have developed good programs, how do they develop those programs? Like what that actually looks like in practice. Again, without getting too long-winded, which I've already seemed to have done. How are you guys doing? Kevin, maybe you can jump in and interrupt me so I don't bore the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, great. We spoke, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if I knew we were going to be on video, I would have had a shave. I would have cleaned up the hair a little bit.
Look how fucking smart I am. Look, cravat. I got the light.
but here we are.
And then Justin, how's it going over in Wales?
It's same old, same new. Athletes training, competitions arriving, and I am pushing strings, pulling strings, doing all the nuance. I spoke to somebody this morning, one of my training partners, and we talked about I talked to him, he listened, about as they get into that elite band, as we get to the serious side of, the relationship, the athlete's development process, a little like a chess grandmaster, if you've played chess for any length of time, the opening moves. And it's when you get into the middle and end game is when you have to sit and think. You save the clock for those times. You watch a chess game, they could get the first 12 to 17 moves out in memory. Boom, boom, boom. It's a little like that with coaching athletes in the first year, second year, third year, fourth year. As experienced coaches, you know what you're doing. And that is in your memory. It's in your experience. It's in your philosophy. It's and then they get into a place where it's new territory for them, and as a result, it's new territory for you. So that's the sort of that was in my thoughts today. Perhaps quite relevant for today's topic of conversation.
Yeah, I actually before we move on into the actual conversation itself, I did want to plug the Willpower YouTube, because I think the other night I had to do a bunch of programs. So I just put on the Willpower Podcast and listened to all 9 episodes, and actually thoroughly enjoyed them. They're fantastic. They're hilarious, really informative and unique. So I don't know how you came up with that format or the way that you kind of laid it out and had people included, but it's really cool.
Well, I decided to indulge myself and say, well, we'll do this thing. What we film in there is an hour or so of what actually happens through the day. I mean, the fucking all the talking and the laughing, and you can feel the energy and the friendship and the connection in the relationships that are developed. And it's like, it's a bit like this broadcast now. We should be able to fucking talk inexhaustibly for hour upon hour about the thing that we live.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, well, I don't really give a fuck who listens to it. God bless you all if you do. But it's for me, and if it resonates with you, God bless you. And if it doesn't resonate with you, turn it down or turn it off.
Yeah, which is exactly why I have you two on the podcast with me, is because of the unique experience you two bring, but also the enjoyment of the conversations. So as we kind of transition into the topic of the show, which is habits of highly effective coaches, maybe I don't know, it's kind of the distinction that needed to happen when we talked about AI coaching versus in-person coaching. Maybe we should even lay some groundwork and say, what is a coach? Like, what is the main responsibility of a coach? How do you kind of define that so we can exist beyond the sets and reps where people probably believe most coaches live? Kevin, Justin, I don't know how you want to tackle this, but just setting some groundwork of what coaching actually is.
So I actually have a definition of coaching. It's simple. But your job as a coach is to get the highest level of potential out of the individual in whatever endeavor you're guiding them on. That's all a coach is. So a powerlifting coach, my job is to get the most potential out of them as a powerlifter. That's it.
Yep. And mine is be consistent, keep it simple. That's it.
Okay. And then that takes us into, knowing what we think a coach is or what we understand a coach to be. You can be better or worse at it. Obviously, Kevin, as you defined it, you're getting the most out of someone's potential, knowing they exist on the spectrum of doing the absolute most they could ever do, which I will never actually know. I don't think anyone can really believe to be at the limit of their potential. But we know if we're working towards that, and we also know if we're not working towards it. So there is some evidence of being more or less productive with the coaching, and that requires certain traits of a coach. And Kevin, I know you've thought about this thoroughly. You talk about your pyramid that you've kind of shared with us in the last episode. So if people aren't familiar with that, they can go check that out and listen to it. But you can have traits that are more or less effective at getting the most out of an athlete. And I guess for you, Kevin, since you answered the other question first, what are some of the habits that we could kind of dig into individually later on that you think a coach should have, or highly effective traits a coach should have to help get the most out of someone's potential?
So first and foremost, I'm a big believer you get the energy back that you put out into the world. So if you want people to be disciplined and to sleep, to eat well, to do all the little things that they're supposed to do, you better be the one laying that example down. Like you should be the one that they can look at and be like, I got to be like that fucking guy right there. Like you literally lead the dance, right? Mm-hmm. But then, so like when I started, I think with coaching, what ends up happening in the very beginning, you get overly zealous, right? And it's like, man, I want to be a coach. So it's like, how can I write the best program right now today to get the best amount of results? And you just want to share those huge PRs that are going to happen right off the bat, right? So this is kind of like a Carl Jung philosophy on aging, but I think it kind of responds to coaching as well, and lifting in general, just being an athlete. Where if you're 10 years old, 1 year of your life is 10% of time. So your perspective of time, that 1 year seems to take a long time, right? But if you're 50 years old, it's 2%. So now all of a sudden years go by faster. So your perspective of time changes a little bit. I think that happens as you get a little bit older and you start coaching a little bit longer and stuff like that. So you run out there, you're trying to just throw PRs on people. And what's really important at that point in time is everybody's going to do this no matter what words Justin, I, or you say. Every new coach is going to jump in and try to do that, right? Because experience is going to have to teach that lesson. You're not going to be able to be like, oh no, you need to be patient. They can't understand it. They don't have that perspective. But what they need to do is they need to be aware. This is why mindfulness is the bottom center of my pyramid for everything, right? Everything is built off of self-awareness. So you need to be aware when you're hitting that roadblock to be like, hey, do I want to be better or do I want to be right? And be able to make those adjustments and be able to constantly self-reflect, right? Because self-reflect increases self-awareness, which increases self-regulation. So then over time, as I went through it, finally I was like, you know what? I understand everybody's a different skill level, but who am I to say who will and won't be a world champion, right? So if that's my fucking goal, is to get high level success from you and your most potential, I just label that as the top of the mountain, right? Let's say to be a world champion lifter, what do you need to do, right? And then we work backwards. So then there's intermediate things we need to do, and then there's day-to-day things we need to do, and then we build a program that builds up that process. So for us, what I ended up doing is like self-reflecting on a lot of my experiences. So like technique to me, I mean, obviously with my ties to Shaco for as long as what they were, technique was drilled into me as one of the most important aspects of training. And I firmly believe that. But that's actually on the second tier of our pyramid, because during my self-reflection, what I realized was you get a lot of lifters who they just have that perfectionist attitude. So they stare at their videos and they're expecting the next rep to be perfect and then the next one to be perfect. In the next 20 years of their life, they're just going to do perfect repetitions. So we need to develop that student attitude first, that self-awareness, that understanding of the process that needs to be built first before we can even start like building those things up. So I think using a lot of words, I think building foundational habits starts with you understanding what they need to do to be the best at their job, and you do it better than them. You need to lead by example. Like one of the stories that has always like stuck with me. This is when Kobe Bryant was with the Lakers, and one of their new acquisitions was trying to get in there early to impress everybody, want to be the first one in there. So he showed up at like 4:30 a.m. and then Kobe comes in at like 5 a.m. or something. And then the next day, that guy shows up at 4:30 and Kobe's already covered in sweat and has already got his phone. And like, to me, that's what leadership and that's what coaching is. Like, you need to be that guy, right? That you're taking that first shovel full of sand to build that freaking trench, and they follow in line with that. So if you're that coach and you're telling people that you need to do X, Y, and Z, well, you better already have your ducks in a row doing X, Y, and Z so they can look to you and be like, that's the guy I need to follow. It's leadership, right?
Yeah, that was great. I have a handful listed out, and we can kind of dig into each a little bit more. But Justin, based on what you just heard, based on your decades of coaching, what is your overview of highly effective traits of a coach look like?
All of what he said, and I'll try to nuance it a little bit, because we have mindfulness leading to awareness. You must be conscious to be mindful. You must know your patterns. And by that, I mean your patterns of unconscious behavior that you project. And you must be aware of those things, because I think we spoke about it, Kevin, on your podcast. There are times whereby we are reactive, and that takes you away from being conscious. And so you may react in a way that is not to the benefit of the group, not to the benefit of the athlete. So these words, which sound wonderful, and they're very, we know these words, they're simple words, they're very challenging to repeat day after day after day, which is why I say be simple, be consistent and keep it simple. That's the point of this. But what are you aware of? What is the simplicity? Well, the simplicity could be a program. It could be the language, but it also needs to be the simplicity of your mindfulness, your awareness, your consciousness, your consistency to be present, to be responsible, to pay attention, to listen. All these things are so simple, but once you put them all in the list, as we may do in a short while, you need to be a certain kind of individual that will enjoy being this thing thoroughly. You must be it. You can't. You can learn the things along the way, but it must be in your nature to be a leader. And sometimes people may get enamored by owning a gym or having athletes and such like. And it's not in their nature to be a leader. It's not in their nature to take responsibility seriously. It is in their nature, perhaps, or their ego to enjoy, as Kevin alluded to earlier, the young coaches that, in order for the ego to be satisfied, we must prove to the world that we can make a PB happen or something of the like. Well, okay. But as you get further down the line of coaching, and we know that is an automatic process in a certain point, but it is who we demonstrate each and every day that becomes your style, and it becomes your culture. And then as the energy comes in, again, as you've alluded to, is the energy that you and I put out, or all three of us put out, we draw in certain energies that want to be led by this energy, guided, mentored, you know, and then it becomes lifelong. It becomes life. And how can you describe that journey to a young coach of 1 year, or it's impossible. They have to experience. It's a linear experience, coaching. You have to develop athletes, and you have to know what time it takes to develop them. And then who do you become as a result of leading those athletes along the way? Well, you have to change. There's no, we're not complete beings. They're not complete athletes. And we learn about ourselves, but we must be open. We must be, as Kevin said, reflective. You must reflect a lot and make sure that you are humble, and that it isn't your ego that's driving the group or the style of leadership, but it is your nature, your heart, your soul, all these sort of ethereal things that, listeners may think are a little woo, but okay, let your ego drive your gym for 10 years. You'll be on your fucking own.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think it's kind of that same concept, repackaged that we talked about last time. When you read something like the Weightlifting Encyclopedia, and you try to understand kind of the basic concepts, and then you would have to revisit them to really understand them fully later on. How much of this, when you two both started out coaching, felt normal and felt natural and just needed to be refined, right? It's kind of like the blade needed to be sharpened, but the steel itself already existed. Justin, you mentioned, the need to be a leader, but can someone develop themselves into a leader if they start off a little more of someone who tends to like to take direction and be guided? And you two also, and I'll try not to bring in too many pieces of information into this, but how much of this stuff should exist initially to be refined as the coach spends more and more years coaching athletes?
Okay, so leadership is a reflection of your personality and your nature. And the skill that you're learning is a skill. We're learning the skill of mechanics, technique, and before I was a weightlifting coach, I was teaching people how to be on television. I was a chef. I was a restaurateur. I was a leader. I had my own businesses. I always really liked people. That was the bit that got me here, was to say, well, I really like people. And what can I do that helps people? That was it. I didn't have any 10-year aspiration of being, my boys are going to the World Championships, the games, and I didn't know that existed, or didn't have that perception of what I was doing. It was to help people, but I'd already experienced myself as a leader in different parts of industry or the world, so I knew that people would follow this energy. Great. I didn't know as much about myself then as I do today, thankfully. But if you are 21 opening a gym, the experience of leadership is 21 years. How much have you led? How much do you love people? You have to love them. They have to love you. And if it's uneasy to be that way, if you think it's about telling people what to do, you're going to have a really challenging experience of being a coach or owning a gym or whatever avenue you take. So can people learn? Well, it depends upon their humility. It depends on how humble they are along the way to know, again, I'll go back to the ego, what's driving you to be a coach. And have you experienced enough of life to be wise, to have wisdom? Well, you need to fail a lot to be wise. That's very important. And you need to look at yourself. We did the projection, whoever's projecting fault on others, they're not humble. That's being driven by fear and ego and those things. So, of course, people can. It depends upon your nature as to who you get. I'm sure, I would go into Kevin's gym and I would see athletes that I recognize. I don't know, I've never met them before, but I'd recognize the characters, because gyms have characters that are really very similar if the leadership style is similar. And I feel that Kevin and I lead our gyms in a very similar way. We have very similar philosophies. We have similar words. So the energy that we draw, the athletes that we draw, I would recognize as athletes.
I think for me, especially earlier on, it was easier for me just because, like, one, if you've played a college sport, they kind of at the college level are already gonna kind of accept you as one of theirs, right? And every high school kid, knowing that you've played a college sport, like, they want to be into that point. So there's already this like baseline level of respect that's given. And even like post college, when I was still training and doing like the MMA stuff, and you come in with some black guys and like, you're training hard and you're doing this stuff with them, even though it's in a different context and a different sport and stuff like that, like, they just respect that, right? So that respect just helps drive that like authoritative leadership type of piece to it. But at the same time, like, when I like reflected on like these types of things, because I want my senior lifters to be leaders, right? So I have a kind of a little bit different of a viewpoint of leadership, but leadership is actually towards the top of our pyramid. Like, I think it can be a learned skill, and everybody leads in different ways. But if we take somebody and we give them the knowledge, they work hard, they display resiliency time and time again, they develop confidence because we're laying the groundwork for them to develop confidence. And then over time, that confidence turns into poise. And poise is being yourself no matter what is fucking happening around you. And then that poise turns into leadership. So one of the, I'm going to use an example here of Alyssa. When Alyssa first started, she was newer on the team, wasn't one of the stronger ones, didn't qualify for nationals, that type of thing. But over the course of now 4.5 years, right, she's always been trying to learn, and people notice that. Her lifts have gone way better. Her technique's gotten better. Now she's one of the only ones who qualifies under the new qualifying standards. And she's one of the stronger ones in the team. She's got into gear. And I had a lifter, so this is before Daytona Nationals. So late May of this year, she was lifting in a gym with a couple of the other team members. And this is 2-3 weeks before the competition, and she missed a squat. And in a lot of cases, you'll see newer lifters, when they miss a lift, especially close to a competition, it's the end of the motherfucking world. But she just got up, dusted herself off, killed her next accessory lift, and she just moved the fuck on. She goes to nationals and has the meet of her life. Goes 9 for 9, hits PRs on everything, finishes 9th in the country. Like, she literally had the best meet of her life after a miss 2 to 3 weeks earlier. And I had a lifter that turned to me and goes, and this lifter has problems controlling her emotions after missing a lift. And she goes, I want to be like that. How do I get to be like that? That's leadership. Like, Alyssa didn't say a fucking word. She didn't give her any advice. All she did was demonstrate what being a leader in the gym, in the trench, what that meant. And that right there, that's why, like, I have team captains, and she's one of them, and that's why she's one of them.
Well, then, I think that was a good segue into this topic that I wanted to bring up, which is the idea of having a team captain. I'm not sure how prevalent it is, how many weightlifting clubs or powerlifting clubs or teams actually have like this structure that's well-defined. Typically, it's like, here's the best athlete. They're usually the one who's going to kind of be the person to field questions if newer lifters have any. Be the person that someone would go to. I'm thinking, like, in terms of for our listeners, like a Cal Strength, you would have a Wes Kitts. People probably go to him for some advice or some help, but you two make it a formality and kind of give a title to the person. And I know, Justin, you have your team captain. I think her handles is like Ketters or something, so I don't want to butcher her name too much, but on the podcast, and I'm just Kevin kind of explained his process for developing that role for Alyssa, but maybe you can explain your process for developing that role.
The team captain at Willpower has to be somebody who is always present in the gym, that, as Kevin just described, displays resilience, poise, fortitude, is a natural leader, and has the respect of everybody here. And when we so we have a board And on the board, there will be 2 or 3 people, and we decide who will be nominated for team captain. And you have to have these elements in order to be the captain. You can't miss one. So you could have respect, but if you're not present, you cannot be the captain. You could have presence, but if you don't have the respect, you cannot be captain. And the captain is, right now she's in her second year, or maybe it's starting a third year. I don't know. But there's no one else who's going to be team captain. She displays it each and every time. She has the respect of all athletes, all male, female, doesn't make any difference. And when we decided to have a captain. Ironically, somebody picked themselves as team captain way back, like 5 or 6 years ago. And God bless Max. He was an ego narcissist, right? And he said, "I'll be the captain of the team," right? But what it did was give me like, oh, that's a really good idea. This was 6 years ago, whatever. And then after Max, we had Tom Wayne was team captain. Again, he wasn't the best athlete, but he was respected. He was present. He was a very gentle kind of individual, but everybody respected Tom. And as the years have gone on, the role of the captain becomes something whereby people can go to the captain with maybe subjects that they feel are for her and not for me, if you understand. So it's been this thing that sort of makes sense. You should have a team captain. We're a weightlifting team. We've got 30 to 40 competitive lifters. So we have our coaches, and then we have the team part of it, which is the captain. So the captain will be, organizing people who's staying where at the competition. Do you have a live? It's all of that sort of thing. And then, looking around the gym, who looks a little bit, because as much as we're eyes on, people may communicate with the captain on a personal level, and then it may bring things to my attention that you may be oblivious of, because athletes have a very high talent of keeping things from us, especially in the emotive sense, of how they're feeling. But they may well tell the captain because they respect her and they trust her. So you've seen Sarah on the podcast, and a very naturally fiery individual who is grounded, and it's a brilliant thing for us. We make it, we present we've got a velvet cap that the captain has as a presentation. It's an event. We make sure that the whole pageant of being the captain, the responsibility of being the captain, is something that I respect. It's something that is important to me, in as much as I trust that person implicitly to tell me the truth about what's happening. They guard me. She guards me like a fucking wolf. She makes sure my back is covered with certain things. Like, right. So there's trust there. It's a brilliant place to be. She gets to competitions. Like, she's going to I think she's going to a competition, even though she's not competing, she will be there to support the team. It's like, what more can you ask from these people? It's fucking amazing.
She stopped lifting because she had a baby, but one of my lifters, she was one of my stronger lifters, but she weighed 114 pounds. And like, when this girl started like getting in your face type of thing, like, it didn't matter how big the guy could have been, even like, they respected everything that she said. So like, Justin had said something like, you have to be present, and you can be present but not have presence. Like,
Correct.
even though she was 114 pounds, like, she had a presence to her. And so like, she would be the one that would help handle people at bigger meets with me, for that same reason that Justin was saying, because she could be honest and be like, hey, like, this looks like this, I think we should do this. Or she would make these decisions on the fly, but she had been with me. She was literally like my second ever lifter, and she had been with me forever. So at that point, we were on the same wavelength without having to actually think about it. And I also think it's really important to highlight the people who are doing things that they're the examples of what you want, right? And that's what being a captain is. It's like, this is what you need to strive for. If you have questions on what you should be doing in the gym, just fucking look. That's what you need to be doing. There's like, they're an extension of you and all that stuff. Like, I never wanted assistant coaches, and I'll never have assistant coaches, because you can't think like me. But if we're in the trench going through this together over a period of time, you can think like me. Like, at this point now, me and Alyssa don't have to say words, and we can be on the same wavelength with stuff. And that's what I need out of those types of lifters.
We also, I do have coaches. So my journey is to do less. You know, I can think more, but I want to do. Do I really want to teach somebody else to snatch? No. You know, that's my coach's job. Do I want to take other youths through the pathway? No, that's my coach's job. I want my coach here, Tom Jolly, to do that because I've done it. You do it. You need to be able to do it. You need to know what it's like to take a 15, 14-year-old, 12-year-old and take them through, as long as they want to be in the sport, take them through the development process. I've done that journey. I can supervise that coach. The captain's responsible for the mechanics of the team.
Yeah.
My coaches, I want to be a coach developer. That's a part of that's what I see myself in the future doing, is developing other coaches, helping other coaches go through the journey of being a coach. And so it must start in my own gym. And as Kevin was talking, I wrote down, like, being the leader means to give responsibility to those individuals whom you trust and saying, yeah, I can't do it all. And why would I want to do it all? Because I want to share my knowledge. I don't want to contain it, but I need to see you in the trenches each and every day coaching and see how you make a decision. How do you communicate? How do you build upon the elements of your character? Because my coach isn't me, and he doesn't pretend to be me. He's a grown man. He's 38, 9, whatever he is. Whereas if you get a younger coach, all they'll do is replicate, and you don't want to replicate what comes out of my mouth, not in the fucking slightest. You can't. And same with you, Kevin. You know, you get a young coach in who thinks he's you Mark II, and people will be going, what the fuck is this? They can take it from here, but they can't. So, you know, again, the layers of the infrastructure of this gymnasium have been, as I've gone through my journey, I need help, and I'm happy to be helped, and I will select the individual. As soon as I met Tom 4 years ago, crikey, my phone never rings. Right, this is the landline, never rings, and I never answer it. So this is going to be interesting. I'm not answering. So when I said to Tom, you know, I've met him 2 or 3 times, and I knew he could be my coach. I knew it because I could feel from him that we were complete opposites in our characters. But he was serious and I'm serious. So I need a foil. I need somebody opposite me, not to try and be me, who is mature, who is going to make this his profession. And so that's my coach. But the captain is different. The captain is about the team. It's about the lifters and the people who come in. You know, when a new person comes in, she is welcoming. She is, you know, because it can be really intimidating going into a mature environment whereby you feel challenged, or you feel not worthy, or whatever the sensations you may feel. And the captain's there to welcome you. She's there to make sure that you're looked after. You have a platform that somebody will share with you, and just these lovely human qualities. Like, you know, I wrote the up in arms quote that you said about the AI. We're going to go back to that, Josh. Don't you worry. Like, you know, this is a human thing. This life of ours, it's about people, and we lead it. And you must be in your right mind and your center and very grounded to go and lead it confidently, that the direction you're going in is pulling everything in the right direction. Because if you're off a little bit, everything's following you in the direction that isn't true. You have to be truthful to yourself. And the captain is there to keep me fucking on a line. There we are.
I think a lot of this is kind of similar to the process of picking up the skills to craft an excellent program. Initially, you look at other programs. I know, Justin, you said you don't like to look at programs, but initially you view example programs. You kind of pick up the methods, and then you would trial things out. You may do like verbatim West Side or verbatim, Texas method or something. And then over time, you develop the skills to manipulate volumes and intensities differently, so that to quote Mike Israetel, someone was like, "Hey, what kind of program do you run?" He's like, "It's modern periodization. It's just like this concept of creating a training plan over time that takes you from one point to another. There's no title for the program." And I think it's the same way with developing your coaching identity. Initially, I was kind of coached by Glenn Pindlay for a while and would pick up his mannerisms and try to um, do a little bit of what he did because that's what I liked and what I looked up to, and realized that over time, um, that's kind of a false identity. So it makes more sense to just exist in the moment. And that's what I try to do. And I try not to overthink it or um, to craft it too much. Obviously being cognizant of how to operate within a gym and within a weightlifting team environment. But it's the process of starting as a unique individual, becoming some sort of like a multiple of someone else, and then coming back to the point of taking the actual skills of the coach and using those skills, not the personality of the coach and using the personality. So I think that's a really good point.
Right. So let me ask you a question, Josh.
Sure.
At what age are you?
I'm 29.
29. So how long have you been coaching?
Formally, in this club environment, about a year and a half.
So first couple of years.
Yeah, before it was like just it's really strange remote stuff, very few people, but now it's like in a club with a team.
So this is more for you than us. This is you said at the top of the show, for you, it's a selfish project here.
Oh yeah.
So
always.
What is your challenge? What is your nature? And then if, like you've just said, well, I tried to do a little bit of Glenn and found that, okay, that's probably a cul-de-sac. I have to come back out of that. So where are your challenges as a young coach?
A lot of it is one, picking up on the same thing you guys talk about with the team captain concept. It's like, okay, you assume the role of leader because you have the traits of a leader, right? I naturally do things that I want to do, and people kind of come along for the ride, so to speak, because I think it's, I want to be as strong as I can, within reason. I want to help people get as strong as possible and compete at the highest level in sport. And then it's like, knowing that I want to do all of this stuff, how can I better facilitate other people to help other people when they choose to do that? And I find that, when you attract enough people and they become so enamored with it, they also want to do the same thing. So started taking on people to help with like side projects like the YouTube channel, scheduling stuff for me, not because I want to pay an assistant, but because I know for them to understand the process or the system, they need to be exposed to the system, and giving them some responsibility helps them buy in a little bit more. So
I'll ask the same question. What do you find challenging? Because you've just said a lot of words and I haven't heard your challenge yet.
It's
just go to the gym floor. What is your challenge?
I guess the challenge is just, it's the entire thing. It's like figuring out the entire profession of coaching and trying to exist as an effective agent in that process. It's like, I don't get too zoomed in on one individual thing, but it's just trying to be as competent as possible within the entire framework of like, this is what you have to do to be a successful coach. Which is why when I bring you guys on, I ask, what are the effective or what are the traits of a highly effective coach? It's like, within this like bubble of coaching, what do you have to do? Like, what's everything that you have to be responsible for, and how does that change over time? And then you can gauge yourself within the process, and you can also better interact with the process and find out like what you need to work on. So it's becoming a better coach as a coach, right? And not just getting too isolated in one thing.
Go on, Kevin, you go.
How do you define being a coach?
I think I would err towards your definition of helping people reach the highest potential possible, but that exists within the space of coaching others, competing, and then the personal aspects of like just being a better individual overall and developing skills and traits that exist outside of the gym. And because it's done so much for me in that sense. I always like to tell my backstory. I won't do it on this podcast because it's not relevant, but I, go from like living in your mom's basement to trying to develop a successful weightlifting team. Like I would attribute a lot of that to just lifting weights. So to some degree or to some extent, instilling those same values and traits in other people is part of the goal, as well as realizing performance, which performance is just varied across whatever kind of isolated situation you're in.
I'm enjoying this now. So when you hear us talk about mindfulness, awareness, consciousness, simplicity, you have a talent, I'll call it that, for complex structures for simple processes.
Mhm.
You speak in a way that layers information, and following the point becomes more challenging.
Right.
Does that reflect in your coaching? Do you keep it simple?
I don't know what simple would look like. I try to do the best job that I can do, and I think having maybe a simple idea, but just making sure it's reinforced enough. So if there's anything I can exploit, I try to exploit it, and maybe that adds complexity to it. But
Well, think about the way you communicate for from the beginning part. So, athlete comes in.
right,
Your athletes come in. You have a training time. Let's say it's 5 p.m. Your athletes
sure.
come in. What are you doing? Are you training with them, or have you trained already?
I try not to train with them, but sometimes the reality is that I have to. So I'll lift with them, but that kind of spreads my workout out. So I end up kind of coaching, lifting. Um, but I much prefer the coaching side of things. So I kind of err towards that and use my lifting as an example. It's like, here's what I think good movement is. Here's what I think being focused with heavier weights would look like. Here's how you kind of get out of the zone of just being a casual, individual in the gym space, and you're actually trying to perform at a high level. So set things up as an example, along with trying to kind of guide people
Okay,
within the
so that
process.
sounds to me that it's very demonstrative. Here's my demonstration.
Right. Yeah.
In a physical, because I've written, I've drawn a line down my center column here, and I've written you on the side, on the right-hand side, and I've written you as an athlete, because it sounds like you
Sure.
talk like an athlete, as well as trying to understand being a coach. Do they see you as an athlete? Do they see you as a coach? How do they see you?
They see me as a coach.
Right. Kevin,
Yep.
you ask him something. I got loads of shit here.
Yeah. So one thing, like for me, I'm gonna just give an anecdote here. When I train, I'm not their fucking coach. I'm their perfect training partner. Like what everybody will say is they all say I have like an alter ego when I'm coaching. I mean, when I'm training with them, right? Like I will guarantee you, if you do a training session with me, you're gonna catch on to my energy. It's gonna be a little bit more serious, a little bit more intense, and nobody's gonna disagree with that. It's not for everyone. And I want to demonstrate at the times where I feel it's important to demonstrate. But as like Alyssa, I fucking hate training with Alyssa. Like she talks too much, get out of my face, and she probably doesn't like training with me. But we have a great coach-athlete relationship at the same time, right? In terms of, so for me, so I'm going to pose a question based off of my experiences. So in the beginning, because I was coached by Boris Shako for 3 years, of course I tried to mimic what he was doing and try to say the things he said to me to other people. And I do think that was an incredibly important learning experience. So I'm reading this, I'm going to ramble. That's what I do, and I don't care. So I'm reading this book. It's called The Education of a Coach. It's this gem that's just like an autobiography of Bill Belichick, basically, and his dad in there. And he talks about the first 4 years of his coaching career just being an apprenticeship, right? And I could completely relate to this. And one of the things that like really struck with me too was like he couldn't understand why coaches would just learn one side of the ball. Like if you know everything, it's just this one complex, cohesive game. And who gives a fuck if you're good at analyzing that game on Monday? You better be good doing it in the spot when adjustments need to be made, right? And to me, I was like, that's fucking coaching right there. You have a plan going in. You're going to get punched in the face with that plan because other teams are making adjustments. How do you respond? Right. And it's not just necessarily how you respond in a strategical way, but of course that's important. But like they talked about how he doesn't show much emotion under those times. He's able to keep the emotion out of it, think strategically, think rationally, make the adjustments, and put the pressure on somebody else to do things. And to me, I was like, that's it. That's his personality. That's how we grew up around the sport. And so I started thinking more about like my programs, like the way that we do things, that my program on paper is my fucking personality. That's why we do a lot of heavy singles. That's why we have a lot of variation. You are going to come into the gym and you're going to compete every fucking day. Yeah, of course, within reason. Like we're going to, you know, have lighter days and there's going to be general strength training principles applied to your programming. But the program for me is my personality. Like if you could decipher it in a different language, you'd be like, I can tell exactly who that fucking person is. How do your programs reflect who you
are? I think a lot of it comes down to taking a lot of my experiences, which, you know, would be lifting, which would also be just trying to become immersed in kind of whatever information that exists on weightlifting, because I kind of become obsessive with like reading and listening and just being kind of indulging myself on knowing more. So I guess just exploiting whatever, like you said, kind of the principles, personal preferences, and then obviously individualizing it. So, you know, to some extent, you know, again, it comes back to a Glenn quote. That's like, I guess weightlifting is kind of like taking physics and taking psychology and kind of organizing the two. So it's taking the physics aspect of it, like what makes sense in terms of movement, technique, efficiency, and then taking the psychology aspect, like what do people feel like they need, what do they want, what keeps them happy, and kind of layering on top of that, and then personal preferences in terms of what I like and what I think makes sense. But that's always it's ever changing insofar as if it works, I'll look more into it. If it doesn't work, I'll think about why it didn't work and try to adjust.
Are you a confident programmer, Josh? Sorry, Kevin.
No,
go on. You go. I'll save mine.
I think this was J.M. Blakely had said this, and he multiple-time world record holder in the bench press. So you can get into these processes, I think, as a young coach, where you're trying to show your knowledge in a way and try to outsmart everybody else, right? Where you might say like a heavy set of 5. Well, it's the first 2 reps that have the most carry over to training because of velocity and technique and motor unit recruitment and all of that. But which one builds the best lifter? That, like Glenn loved heavy 5, right?
Oh yeah.
Which one builds the best lifter?
Right.
That fucking 5th rep builds the best lifter. I don't care what any science says. That 5th rep. And when J.M. Blakely said that, I was like, that's it right there, right? Me as a young coach, I would try to outsmart myself. But like hearing it from a high level lifter like that and just thinking about like my experiences in sport, it's not the science that's building it. It's that fucking effort, right? And how do I get that person? I don't want the person who can do the first 2 reps of that hard 5. I want that person whose nose is bleeding at the end of that hard 5, because that's the rep that builds lifters. I don't care what the science says. So that to me, and for some reason when you were just saying it, I was like thinking back to like when I was mimicking more of the Shaco stuff and everything's like a much lower intensity in terms of like RPE and stuff. And you just didn't see that character in them. They get anxious with heavy reps and stuff. And now it's just like, they just want to take heavy singles all the time. And like at a meet, you can just smell the difference in confidence between even the same lifter over a shorter period of time.
I think, sorry, Josh, my style has sort of merged between those two naturally. So a lot of my training is driving the skill, which has to be, so we'll train in a zone, then we'll move to another zone, and I need to see it demonstrated snatch, clean, and jerk. But when we do squatting, I like to fuck around with the max 5s, the max singles. I go to the methods. I look at different methods, and I say, yeah. And you're exactly right. You want to know the character of the person you're training, how they how their behavior is when it comes to something that is very challenging. And you know that they're thinking about it. They've written it in their program. They've already seen it, and they'll be thinking about it for maybe a week or two, and they'll be fatigued. And that's what you want to see. What is the outcome important? You know, that they actually achieve the repetitions. Well, if they're in the tank, it's important that they do it. But if, for example, they miss the fifth, but they fucking bloodied their nose on number 4, let's say, you're happy. Do you know what I mean? Whether they get the fifth one or don't get the fifth one, in terms of their progress, may not be as important. But when I'm looking at the ways and the means and the methods, like, we have to use the methods. Like, there'll be times perhaps in your programming, Kevin, where you keep people in zones, you park them to see consistency, to see efficiency. They've got to be there. And then the flip side of that is to go into, max fives, whatever it is, and then to see the character and get the stimulus from the adaptive responses of going maximum. That's an important part as well. So, like, when you look at all of the different flavors you could put in your programming, some of it is character flavor, some of it is technical flavor, some of it is building fitness, some of it is the consistency. There are many reasons why we choose what we choose. So I'll go back to my question. And are you confident in your programming, Joshua?
I say that my confidence, I guess I know it's successful. Like, it helps people get stronger. Like, I see that every day. I had, plenty of good lifts yesterday to prove that to myself. But I always feel like I could probably be doing something better or be more effective in the way I deliver it or structure it. So confident in it, but I feel like could always do a better job. So I try not to rest on that too much.
So this is important. You've just said, I'm confident. You sort of stuttered your way into your confidence. God bless you. But you also said you're reflective and you want to do better. Well, that's,
Yeah.
we would all three agree that that's what we want to do for our athletes. So when you're an intelligent guy. We know that. We respect you. And does that confidence of your understanding and your knowledge come through in your programming? Are you second guessing what you're putting down, or are you flowing when you write a program? How flowy does it take? Like, I'm amazed that you listen to 9 hours of my fucking broadcast when you're programming. I can't listen to shit when I'm programming. I have to have clear headspace. I can't have another distraction. So how does your program flow from you?
It depends on I guess it would depend on, I think it flows relatively well. It definitely depends on the person, because you can enjoy programming for people more or less. And it kind of, to your point about the character of the person, sometimes I'll give a range of a percentage for an exercise or a range of reps, and I just see what they tend to do from week to week. And if they always hit the low number, I get really irritated, because to me that helps me understand the character of the person, right? And I actually used a Sean Waxman quote the other day. Had a girl come into the gym, really extensive athletic background, and she's really bought in and whatnot. And I was having her do some stupid exercise. I don't remember what it was, but use that Sean Waxman quote of, when someone comes into the gym, I have them do pull-ups. And whether they do 1 pull-up or 100 pull-ups, it's not the number, it's how much they fight for the next one. Right? If they do 1, it's how much they fight for the second. If they do 100, it's how much they fight for the 100 and first rep. So to me, that's an important part of it, is like, how much do you fight to make something, and how much do I have to try to pull you back? Because whether athletes like it or not, I think we would all tend to err on the side of having more people who push too hard than people who are too conservative and would rather just not miss and would rather just go by the book. Like, I want people who want to go above and beyond, because I think that's going to be the main driver of long-term progress to some extent, obviously balanced with the coach pulling back when appropriate. But so does that answer your question?
Well,
I feel like I went on a
so let's
tangent.
take that. I'll park the word irritated. Be mindful of your words. If you, so let's say, for example, the person that comes in is on the conservative side, where they follow the program, they're unlikely to push forward for whatever reason. And if it does get challenging, then they're sort of like a little bit, that's part of their fear. And you're there as their coach to lead them through that fear into fortitude, into resilience,
Right.
into greatness. Then you've got the other side of the spectrum where they want to push as hard as they can, and you're trying to save them from themselves to a degree. But at certain points, once they've qualified their efficiency and their training with you for a certain period of time, you want to fucking see them drive. You want to drive that fucking horse fucking hard, but you cannot do that all the time. So this one is important to me. The other one, I've got a driver over here, and all I need to do is just pull the reins a little bit and fucking let him go. This one takes me way more time to get them into belief, because they don't believe. There's something in their experience of life where belief is difficult. That does not mean they cannot be great. It does not mean they cannot get to that point. And I've got an athlete who was a perfect case in point. Comes in like a little shrew. Do you have a shrew in America? A little fucking vole, like a tiny mouse. Like cheeps in. And it's yip, 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 like hides in a corner, and was very fearful, I would suggest, at the early part. And so I've been coaching this athlete. I won't even say whether it's male or female, but I've coached this athlete for many years now. And now this person doesn't give a fuck about driving. That was always there, but it wasn't ever shown and it wasn't ever felt. And that's what coaches can do. Good coaching, great coaching, whatever you want to call it. You can draw from that. You can see their fears. You can see what's behind it all, and you can assist it along the way. And then you can get them to this place whereby they are fucking slaughtering it. They're over there now. So I feel that these ones who are coming in a little bit reserved, they have the potential to be this way. Those crazy kamikaze fuckers, you have to just back it off a little. But over here, these are the ones that show you how much you can coach, I feel. Do you get me? Because that's there for that athlete. And now that athlete is fucking firing. And it's great. It's all done now. But we've taken us 3 years to get to that journey.
Yeah, it's podcast has been taken for quite the spin.
Look at Josh. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm off my program. My obsessive reading exploration. It's just gone woo-woo. Go on, Kevin. Bring him in.
I just want to carry on with literally what you were saying, because I think a program needs to have options for both of them, right? Because you do want that kamikaze, that driver, to have those opportunities to do that thing, right? Because they want to do that thing. And whether you like it or not, they're going to fucking do it anyways, right? So we do like with our sub-maximal work, exactly what Justin was saying. Like we repeat the same. It could be 70% 5x5 over and over and over. Your technical efficiency increases will increase the weight a little bit, but it's a lot of repetition within continuous zone. But those max effort lifts are opportunities for each lifter to display one, so that lifter that you have to pull the reins back, show me you cannot be emotional and make a good decision. Yeah. So our week one max effort lifts, we do the same variation. So unlike Westside, we don't rotate them. We rotate the loads. So week one, they're totally 5 to 10 pounds on the bar. Week two, we'll take sub-maximal reps. It might be 70% 5x5 of that week one max effort, and then hit that 5-pound PR on week three. So if you get that psychopath in the gym that just wants to go hard all the time, week two is going to fucking suck, because they're going to be beat to shit. And then week three, they're not going to hit a PR, and then they're going to be upset. And then they have a deload, so they can't even get it back the following week.
Yep.
So they get punished. Yep. And then the other way around, what you end up getting is you get the lifter who's a little bit more conservative. They leave too much weight on the bar week one. Week two is very easy. And then they realize they hit the 5-pound PR, and then they have to take another one. But in that case that's where our guidance comes in, right? So I tell them, take that weight that makes you scared. Once you hit that 5-pound PR, so it's money in the bank, right? So you're not going to just crush their mentality. But hit that 5-pound PR, and then take that weight that you're scared and add 5 fucking pounds to it, and show me you're not going to quit. Like when you miss, I don't want to see that bar just immediately come down to the pins. I want to see you get fucking stuck, and show me that you're trying to drive through. And there are ways to, like using bands, because it's a longer concentric contraction. Like it just teaches them that like driving ability and the time in their mind. Because when you get nervous, time speeds up. And so even though the bands are speeding up the like eccentric of the lift and stuff, they're slowing down the mind. So you can kind of like train those things at the same time, but you have to offer them opportunities to do those things. And to me, there's no science behind that stuff. It's just common fucking sense on how to train a human being to develop the skills that they need to be underneath the bar.
Well, is it common? You know,
Maybe not.
it's simple sense, isn't it? You know, it's like I'm here with, I've had the same experience with different lifters in a different sport, and I'm like, fucking yeah, I've had the people who gun it too far on week 1, they never get to week fucking 3 because they've blown up. You know, last podcast we talked about the young lad who took his heavy double and left 2 ton on the platform. That's what we're talking about. It's an ego lift. He took that on week 1 when I wanted an accumulation. Ironically, he's got a back strain, right? Whether or not it was related, I don't know. But, now we're sort of like, we're off training now. We're managing his training in a different way. Okay, it's what happens. But he's got, the national age groups coming up in 4 weeks' time. I want him fucking ready to go. And by the same token, those mental threshold lifters, the fear comes in at the next weight. So I've got a guy who's on program, and he said to me the other day, he's just made a PR and told me how he put the next weight on, and he was disappointed because he missed the next weight. And so that's his nature, to be disappointed in success. They can't ever celebrate success. They'll be disappointed. I don't mind that. What we did do, though, as Kevin just said, he put the next load on and challenged himself. Great. Did that without me. He trains remotely. So he was able to do that. He made a PR, and now we're looking at the next weight. Now, my program that I've given him over the next wave of time is to get him to that 130, because I know he's a 140 cleaner, and I'm going to get that out of him without having to do much. I'm just going to manage him well, but his mental threshold is talking to him. So there's a bit of restructuring that we have to do with his bracing and his breathing. Okay, that's taken care of in accessories and different stuff. But really, I'm looking to build his paradigm and shift it up. So, when he snatches, when he cleans 120, it doesn't even speak to him. When he cleans 125 in the future, it's not a voice. So the voice comes in later. And the voice of fear will always come in to that athlete. It's very unlikely that you're going to remove it from the athlete's nature or character, because it's been there impulsing them for many years. They're used to it. They're used to it being a limit. And you are there to get to understand them and then navigate them through the fears, navigate them through the thresholds, and then say to them, look at where we began. We began here. We're now here. And tell me that the voice doesn't speak to you now. It doesn't. No, it doesn't. It comes back up here. It's the same voice telling you that you are whatever it is, limited, not worthy, you will fail, blah, blah, blah. But that's our job to see that, and our job to coach that through the time that we're with them, through all of these words: mindful, aware, conscious, be in your fucking gym, be interested, love your athletes, all these wonderful things. That's what it achieves, is it achieves them getting to their greatness over whatever time they're with you. That's what we do as coaches. And if that is a struggle for you as a coach, then change professions. It's, what can you say?
I think too, the program offers those experiences, right? So when you go through something and something happens, it's not my word telling them to do something. It's me talking with them about what they just experienced. And I think that's an incredibly important concept to understand. And
elaborate on that for me, Kevin, please.
What's that?
Just elaborate for that for me for that.
Yeah. So let's say they miss a rep. They know that they missed. And you could be like, oh, well, you put the wrong weight on the bar or whatever, right? But now that you can have that conversation, if I had told them what to put on the bar and they had hit it, they don't experience that. So they don't develop that training skill, because there are sometimes lifters. So one of the things, if I want to get them to be responsible for their training, they're responsible for picking the weights on their max effort lifts. I very, very rarely chime in. I let them do it. They physically put the weight on the bar, and whether they take, and I'll be like, hey, I didn't pick that weight. What was going through your head when you picked that weight? What was going through your head as you approached that bar?
Right.
And now let's talk. So let's say somebody misses a squat and they're like, I wasn't nervous until that weight. Well, what was your self-talk telling you? Well, it was telling me I can't do this. This is scary. Whatever it's telling them. All right. Well, now we need to develop some tools here,
Yes.
right? So like in a lot of our team meetings, it might be picture a time you had success, right? Find a fucking adjective that describes that, right? So like for me personally, what I do is when I chalk my hands, I tell myself I literally this. I breathe in strength, breathe out composure, and then thoughts are fucking gone. It's game time. No longer does my self thought come in. This is why like meditation is so important too.
Yes.
But we all need these like, for me, if I'm feeling, because fear doesn't go away, but it's learning how to use fear as a physiological weapon for you, not
Yes.
against you. So one of the things that like we might do is, all right, well, when you get scared, find that adjective. For me, and you got to be careful too, right? Because saying I got this and then you don't, that's how you fucking shatter confidence. It's got to be ambiguous, right? So like compete, right? I'm going to give my best effort. I know I'm going to give my best effort. And when we do like imagery and visualization, you don't just visualize things going well. Visualize them going fucking sideways. Visualize missing the rep, what you're going to do afterwards, right? That's how you're pre-planning. That's how you learn how to make adjustments, and that's how you learn how to compete. So in terms of, I can't just like saying those words to somebody if they haven't experienced it mean absolutely fucking nothing. Like they'll tell me they do and they get it, but they don't get it until they fucking get it. So yeah, the program has to afford those opportunities, and they have to experience something for those words to mean something. So there are times, and like I build failure into our programs, as shitty as it sounds sometimes. I want them to miss. You're never going to make perfect decisions. Life's never going to be perfect enough to hit a 5-pound PR on a variation every third week. But I want you to learn how to handle fucking failure, because how you handle failure is how successful you're going to be later on. So I want those opportunities in there. And like you'll hear somebody like Ed Cohn be like, oh, never miss reps in the gym. All right, well, if I take somebody who's never played sports, who's 30 years old, missing a rep becomes a fucking life-changing element to them. Like they get frustrated, they can't handle it. You have to experience that failure over and over and over again. And as much as it sounds like, oh, well, if I fail over and over again, doesn't that just train failure? No, motherfucker, that trains success. That is literally what trains success. If you never fail, you don't fucking work hard enough. I don't want you on my fucking team. Anyway.
Right.
Drop.
And so I've written independent and dependent. We've spoken about this before. You're creating independence of choice, independence of selection. You're creating independence of them deciding what it is that they want from that training session, from that day, whatever it is. And sometimes coaches, maybe early on, maybe late on, I don't know, but they have dependency. As they want the athlete to ask them all the time what to do. I don't want my athletes asking me. We sit and we discuss, etc. But I want them independent. I want to see how they choose. I see what they choose, how they warm up. I'm there to watch the patterns of behavior and the patterns of lifting, and then say, tell me why you changed this. What was it you were thinking or feeling at the time you made this change in your preparation or in the selection of weights that you went up to, etc. So we're absorbing the language of training via the body, the emotion, and the actual exercise itself, and we're paying attention and we're bringing it in. It gives us a portfolio over many years of the lifter's character and nature, and that's what great coaches are there to do, because as we said last time, it's a 10-year, 15-year process. We're in it for the long game. If we're consistently in our gym, if we're present and aware, we're seeing everything, and when it comes to the younger coaches who are, reading, learning, it's more for you, Joshua, about your relationships, about it isn't about your knowledge. I'll guarantee you know enough right now. You may not have experienced enough, but you know enough. And so you have to take what you know and then bleed that into, how do I present myself? How do they see me? How do I communicate? Do I use words when I could use actions? Do I use an action when I could, maybe demonstrate this thing or whatever it is? How do you effectively communicate? How do you lead them? What kind of person is drawn to you is different to the person that's drawn to me, etc. And am I comfortable being their coach, being their leader, being their mentor, guide when it may be something that you desire, and yet your challenge personally is to, for me anyway, simplify things down. Keep it simple for yourself, because Kevin, how many athletes have you got?
33.
33. So you've got 33 in the gym. That's 33 relationships. I've got my blue ledgers next door. There's a fucking pile of them. They're human beings. Each one of those contains a human life. All their training life is written in my ledgers. And so, like, within that are their aspirations, their goals, their failures, their successes. It's contained in these records, and I respect each and every one of them. And then that is the record. Out there's the experience, the training in the gym, and then here is the human being that when you said at the top, before we started recording, you said we know what athletes need. They need to eat well, sleep well. I was like, fucking right, and coaches do. You need to make sure you need to be rested. You need to be energized. You need to be able to have the awareness. So if I'm sat here eating Mackie D's or whatever the fuck it is, comatose after it, fucking bulbous and toxic, am I going to be the best version of myself? Well, for me, that wouldn't be the case. So it is a whole thing, because the lives come to you for a long time. They trust you for a long time. And it is the most amazing experience for me as a human being to be here for the athletes that choose to come in and visit this gymnasium.
Getting back to the keeping it simple thing too.
Go on.
And so I probably didn't get confident in my programs until a few years ago, when it started being more I think I was always trying to change things because it didn't represent me as a person, right? I was running like Shaco type programs, and then just like more like linear periodization type stuff. And it wasn't who I am as a person. And then when I was like, oh my God, there's so many fucking programs out there. They all fucking work. But what are the intangibles that make them work? And then I thought of my experiences as an athlete and all that stuff. And I wrote down a list out of this list of words. And then you see these themes. And so this is where the pyramid came from, right? And so resiliency being at the base of the pyramid, right? How do you train resiliency? RPE 7s all the time? That doesn't do anything, right? Training has to have consequences. Well, how can we get consequences that follow these principles that match the individual's needs? And it was that simple. And it just kind of like wrote itself from like those types of things there. And now all of a sudden I created a program that matches my values, that matches my personality and the authenticity of me. And that allowed my programming to flow a lot more as a coach, in terms of like writing it and me not overthinking things, because now my intuition is the program, right? Because it is my authenticity, it is my values, it is my thought process. And always having that pyramid there, it's on the background of my screen when I'm writing programs, so it's always there. Those are the things. Like, yeah, we want these top end things to be developed, but we haven't had this one thing. All right, how can I develop this one thing in this person right now? That's what we're focusing on. And it's really helped me simplify things in a much easier way. But I do think like going through the messing around with a bunch of things, like I think there is a time and a place to play in the sandbox and stuff. But I think everything starts with answering one question: who are you? And understanding who you are and what your values are those highlighted in my programs here? Like me personally as a coach, I absolutely could not program competition lifts all the time at RPE 7-8 and just watch those videos. I'd rather gargle contacts than do that. Like, that's not what I want to do, right? I want to see people's character on display. Obviously, like with, you're not trying to kill them, right? But I want to see people. I want to get that message to be like, hey, for the last year I've been scared of heavy weights, but this is the first time I put a 5-pound PR on that bar, and there were no thoughts in my mind other than executing this repetition. Like, when somebody gets to that point there, I've made a fucking difference in their life, because the next time that they have to speak up at a meeting that may be uncomfortable, the next time that they have to just be in an uncomfortable situation, they're starting to develop confidence as a human being. And like, you know, we tend as coaches to be like, oh, well, there's life outside of the gym and life inside the gym. That's not fucking right. There's just life. It's all one fucking thing. So how they are, if they're afraid to speak up at a meeting, they're going to be afraid of heavy weight. That's just who they are. So you can develop those skills that kind of bleed out into the other environments and stuff like that. And like, to me, that was just a lot more simple than trying to read like, well, velocity-based training does this. And like, and at the end of the day, so when I was going after Shako stopped taking the online lifters, and I was thinking of a coach, I'm like, I can't have some skinny fucking nerd with a pocket protector try to tell me to get underneath a fucking heavy bar. Like, I just don't, to me, it just didn't work. And I had these experiences when I was a freshman in college playing soccer. One of our captains was the backup goalie. And I remember coming off the field and he was trying to tell me what to do. And it's like, dude, you're a backup fucking goalie. You absolutely do not have the perspective of being in the middle of that field and what's happening. I don't respect a fucking word you're saying. Like, I need somebody who's in the trenches, who's experienced that. And like, and to me, when you're doing that, Josh, you're in there, you're lifting, like your experiences is your coaching knowledge too, right? Like, hey, I've experienced these things. This is what I've done. And to me, that's as simple as coaching can be, because it's wisdom, right? You're taking your experiences and you're verbalizing them through a program that's authentic to you based off of your values to a lifter who's meeting you somewhere along the line of those values and stuff.
So Josh, we've spoken for a period of time. Do you think within this broadcast there are the 7 bloody blahs of coaching? What are you taking from this, Josh?
Yeah, I think a bit more informally, this podcast represents the attitude of an effective coach, right? You and yourself, you're effective and have showcased that multiple times over the span of a number of years. So I think the information exists, and it's to the person listening, kind of as I'm doing right now, to connect the dots and pick up what resonates and see how it applies and see how you can put it into practice. So I think it's kind of like reading something outside of your field or outside of your wheelhouse, and then connecting it on in another way to something more specific to you. So I think people listening will pick that up, and whatever resonates with them will help them develop a better understanding of how effective coaches operate.
Let me ask you this, Josh. If you had to lay down the 7 habits of effective coaching, because that's what the title up here in this recording says.
Thank you.
What would the 7 habits be?
Well, so Kevin, you actually pulled us into the conversation really well when you kind of started listing what you thought were really important traits a coach would have. So I think, again, the concept of living it, right? Being as indulgent in the process or of the process as the athlete. And for me, the reason I coach weightlifting and am involved in it and want to know as much about it as possible is because I absolutely just love doing it. I just love lifting heavy weights. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Like, love lifting heavy, love refining the technique and making it as perfect as necessary. And then seeing in practice how this combination of power and force and technical efficiency creates something that didn't exist, right? It comes into being essentially out of multiple parts being brought together. So living it is one.
You said 2 other ones in there. You had love and you had passion. Those 2 things in there, right?
Yes, he did. I've written them down.
Yeah. So having some sort of deep interest, deep involvement, intimate connection with the sport.
You can say love, Josh. It's all right.
Love. And then the kind of the Kobe Bryant example you used, being first and finishing last, I think is very important to me. Because I kind of take pride in the fact that I'm the first person at the club, and I meet everyone when they come in, and I greet everyone when they leave, and I'll walk out with the last person, or I'll follow the last person out and shut the lights off. So I think that's important because, again, for me, it's just reflecting what I want or what I think is important or what can be valuable, and that's being so invested that you're trying, like, you really want to be the first one involved and the last one to say goodbye, because it's like I don't think I have much else, beyond coaching that I enjoy as much. So to be able to enjoy that as long as possible throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month is important. So those are a couple. And then obviously thinking, and I have having the highest ceiling down, and I think you use the example of seeing everyone at their highest potential and then working from there, versus saying, well, let's see what you can do. Like, instead of just kind of having like, well, you might be able to snatch 100 kilos or squat 300 pounds, let's try and get you there. It's more so like, you can do the absolute best you can do with what you have, and we're going to get that out of you in the best way possible. And it's having a process to reflect that. So approaching every case with the highest potential and operating from there, I think is important. I could probably do a better job of that, honestly.
There's a
so that's another one.
There's a video. Do you know who Viktor Frankl is?
Yeah.
So he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He was in 4 concentration camps. But he kind of developed his own like tier of psychology, and he's very philosophical, right? I highly recommend you Google Viktor Frankl crabbing on YouTube. It's about a 2-minute video, and that whole video in that 2 minutes, that's exactly what fucking coaching is. He's talking about flying a plane in a crosswind, and that if you aim for the target to land it, you come up short and you crash. But if you aim way above it, you land the target. And he talks about like how if we tell man that he's greater than what he is, he ends up being exactly what he should be. But if we tell him exactly what he should be, he ends up being less than what he could be. And it's one of those like really like philosophical things. And like when you were talking, it just reminded me of that video. And I think everybody should watch it. It's old, it's hard to see, but it's a 2-minute video. And that to me, that's fucking coaching right there.
Mm-hmm.
You've just mentioned that gentleman, Viktor Frankl, like that as somebody who experienced real adversity. And, sport is a mock of real adversity. Yes, it's challenging, but it's not war. It's not the kind of experience that people have had through, whatever austerity or hardships in life. We're replicating stress. We're replicating greatness, in a way. Yeah, people will be great and they can become great. But look how I'm warm. There's no real adversity. We have to manufacture it in a way, through sport, because we don't, there are no gladiators fighting for their lives in the Pantheon. They're not having to go in and fight the lions. There's not the fact that we can go out and buy food. We don't have to grow the food. We don't know what hunger's like. The vast majority of us. I'm not talking about all of the world naturally, but in our context. So when you elevate that greatness and then they reach where they should be, we're doing it in a real sense, but also we have to manufacture the bits of it that, we're not in that plane fucking we're not dying, are we? And the interesting thing about the barbell is that it can hurt you. Like, that's the great, like, they're playing darts and they're throwing treble 20s, they're developing a skill. No one's getting killed doing that. You go under a 150 snatch, 130 snatch, or whatever it is, you are under threat, physical threat. That's going to, weightlifting, powerlifting, they add another dimension of this game. And that is that you are under fucking risk. So you must be well-trained. You must be high in belief. You must have challenged yourself. You must have, I've written your triangle down. You must have experienced the consequence of training, right? It has a consequence. And we are there as guides over the long term to be consistent, to keep it simple, to have values and standards, to be leaders, to fulfill the 7 things, to be in love with those athletes, to have empathy, to speak to one I haven't spoken to in years who phoned me because of life was challenging. Not because training, but it was having an effect on her training. So we spoke for 1 hour and 7 minutes yesterday, and life became a little bit clearer, one hopes. And so now, as you said earlier, it bleeds into life training. The relationship that we developed as a coach-athlete is now helping this individual in life. Well, what value do you place? I don't. That's an immeasurable quantity when it comes to, helping people in all of their life. Yeah, we get great at snatch, clean, and jerk, or whatever it is, but this is life. and good coaches really have a great impact on people's lives, which they will remember for the rest of their lives. They'll always remember you in wherever the fuck you are, Kevin. They'll remember me in this fucking basement as they wheel me in my wheelchair with my fucking shoe on, with my cane when I'm fucking 85, going, what is he doing over there? Fucking whip, whip, whip.
What I just took for notes there is knife fights before training to increase adversity.
Hold on. I'm fucking out here. Go on. Say that again. I missed that.
I was saying the notes I took there are having knife fights before training to increase the adversity and the consequences of training to get better powerlifting.
Well, make it serious, isn't it? Glenn was always throwing money at them, because they could barely eat. You got Shankle walking around like the fucking lion. You've got John North walking around like those old Cal Strength videos or whatever. I don't know what it's like in powerlifting where you go for the history of it, because you have a great history in powerlifting of, the bleeding nose and the fucking crazies. Maybe West Side is the place to be in there. But, these are not normal people. These are extraordinary individuals. And you're looking for extraordinary individuals to walk through your gym door and come and train with you. So you can have a share of your part of the history of your bit. Because we create history in Willpower. You create history over there. That's what you're looking to do, is for people to look in and go, I would love to fucking train there with those people in that environment.
Well, and I actually met John North for the first time a few weeks ago at a wedding. And the one thing that stood out is he's exactly what you would expect him to be, which is like over the top, very charismatic. He's far from normal in how he interacts with people and how social he is. Like you could pick him out as being a unique individual. And I think to your point, when you meet Donnie, he's different, right? When you meet Glenn, he was a really different guy. He's not someone who blends in. And I think that's an important point, is like it expresses itself through all facets of their character, not just weightlifting. Weightlifting happens to be the form of expression.
So I went to Westside last fall and hung out with Louis for a weekend. And so I had flown in the day before, so it was on a Thursday, and it was late. I maybe had 3 hours of sleep because I had to be at the gym at 4:30 in the morning. And it started where he's already there, Louis already there. So remember the Kobe Bryant thing I had said, right?
Yeah.
So he calls me into his Jeep, and we're just sitting there shooting the shit. And then we go into the gym, and clearly anybody who's ever heard him on a video, he's not a fucking normal individual. So we go into the gym, and we're doing dynamic effort squats. There's these fucking giant pillows I have to stand on, box squats, safety squat bar, 250 pounds of band tension. So it's all done on a percentage of your best. So I have mine on there, and I keep adding weight. I'm not doing the least amount out of this group. I don't fucking care. So eventually there was as much as some of the other ones lifting there. And I think he saw me doing this a little bit. And, he kept challenging me to put more weight in the bar, it's fine. But then instead of doing 5 sets of 5, which was the plan, on the 4th set, he said, we're doing a set of 10. So I had a weight on there that was way fucking heavier than what it should be. And in my head, I'm like, if I don't do this set of 10, he's not going to talk to me all fucking weekend. So I was like, here we go. I've done an exercise I've never done on 3 hours of sleep in a crazy fucking environment. With somebody like that staring at you. So once I hit that set of 10, it was he would talk my ear off the rest of the fucking weekend. But he did this. It was a keep adding weight. And then when I couldn't add weight anymore, he challenged me in a completely different fucking manner. And to me, I was like, this is what makes him a great coach. It's not necessarily the structure of Westside, but he's constantly challenging these guys. And they'd throw money in the chalk bowl and stuff, and they'd have bets on max effort day and stuff like that. So there was the competition, the money, the stuff like that. But he ran the monolith, so he's in your face talking to you the whole time. And it's exactly what you guys were saying about, Donnie walking around like a lion, or, John North, you could tell he was a different individual. To me, that's what I wanted to. I can read his fucking books, and I get what he does for his programs and stuff. But I wanted to experience that one aspect of it, and you could just tell how much he enjoyed fucking training.
Yeah, you can smell it, can't you?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So Jeremy Hartman, who's been on Josh's podcast and he's a friend of mine, came up the following day. And so when I'm sitting in Louis' Jeep at 4:30 in the morning, Louis remembered that he had pulled 782 at an Arnold back in the early 2000s. He's like, oh, he's coming up tomorrow or whatever. And like, he could just remember his numbers, right? But he also got excited. So when Jeremy came into the gym, he's like, oh, we did dynamic effort yesterday, and like saying how much weight I did for a set of 10. Like, he was enthusiastic about my set of 10, even though I'm not a big lifter. He doesn't know who the fuck I am. I'm not a multi-ply lifter. I'm a single-ply lifter. So it's even a little bit different of a sport. But he was excited about it and wanted to talk about it. And then on top of that, Jeremy brought a lifter, and how he coached her and how enthusiastic he was. Like, that experience of seeing that, it's like, everybody will talk about this guy being an asshole, but like, he will help out anybody for no cost. It doesn't matter. And he gets as excited about it no matter who it is. And I thought that was a really great example of all the things you guys were saying.
So you can add passion as well to your 7 traits there. 7 habits. It's not a habit,
Justin,
passion. You've got to be passionate, haven't you? I think
exactly.
if anybody's listening to this, you may disagree or you may agree, but you could not, I challenge you, challenge the passion that we come with when we speak about our subject matter, when we speak about our athletes. And again, we love what we're doing. You can't spend a decade for 15 hours a day in the freezing cold in your fucking gym if you don't love it, if you haven't got a passion for it. Like, if we don't get excited about those stories that you've just said, that I've just said, like, we get excited about it. That's the whole point. And we create our own history in our own gyms for our own athletes.
Well, and I think the reason, again, I get you two guys on the podcast and the people I do is not because I need new information. Like, I'm not trying to develop new ideas and new concepts. It's more so to like bring out what exists that I know exists, and it's to be able to verbalize it, to understand it, and to connect the dots. And I can think about experiences in the gym where, Kevin or Justin, something you guys will say will resonate, and I can think differently about the context of the situation or how I operate within it. But it's not because I'm being something else or someone new. It's just because now that exists outside of me, right? If that makes sense. So again, it's not like, people listening need to write this down so they can try to force their character into it. It's like, hey, if you feel this way, you can be the best version of yourself if you just let it happen, right? Let it manifest itself. Because I don't go to the gym to make money. If I did, I'd be thoroughly disappointed. But I go because, Justin, as you said before, I love the people. I love what I do. I love weightlifting. I just like watching people lift weights. Like, there's nothing more enjoying than seeing someone take the bar and warm up to their heaviest set for the day, help them, whatever help they need. And like, the results that, is part of it. But just watching someone lift is the satisfaction in and of itself. So hopefully people listening take something, but not because they don't have it, but just because they need to express it.
I just want to add one thing to that, Josh. Like, for
Sure.
me personally, I don't even care about like the lifting part. Like, I don't care about watching lifting. I enjoy it and all that stuff. But what I really care, I fucking love to compete. I don't care what it is. Like, if I'm like, when my daughter was younger, if we're playing fucking Candyland, I am in it to fucking win it. And like, I literally just love that aspect, and I love doing that with other people. Like, just being in that trench, working hard, competing, trying to be the best you can. Whether it was soccer for me, then MMA after, or powerlifting. Like, I've enjoyed them all the same way because that's it. I fucking love to compete, and I love doing it with other people. Like, I don't have a passion for powerlifting. I don't even know what the fuck it was when I started powerlifting. I was like, I had stopped fighting or whatever, and I signed up for a meet before I even picked up a fucking barbell. I was like, yeah, I'll fucking compete in a meet. Why not? And I had some fun doing it. And obviously the fun in the beginning led to more of it, but I never dreamed of being a powerlifting coach or any of that stuff. I fucking love sports, and I love to compete and doing it with other people.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, you just started something called Strength School. Maybe you can talk a bit about that, because obviously people who listen to this are very passionate about lifting weights, very passionate about getting stronger. And I think that's a good resource to help people do just that.
Yeah. So the link's it's long, and it's on my bio on Instagram, which is KW Cann. But so basically what I wanted to do is I had started I had all these like notes taken, and then Justin was talking about his like mentorship of coaches, and I was like, you know what, that's a sign. I got to just fucking put this thing out there. So basically, what I did is I want to create this online virtual classroom that's really fucking affordable, because it's not a mainstream income of mine. I don't need it to make money, type of thing. I may not like it to. But I want there to be a place, because there's so much fucking bullshit. If I see one more meme or infographic on the internet telling me how I should fucking coach, I'm going to have an aneurysm. So like, I want there to be these like here's the basic principles of strength training from the fucking textbooks. Here's where you need to start with your information, and then let's build from it. So like we started right with the history, right? So you got to know history first. You absolutely cannot. If you don't know who Westside Barbell Culver City is, get the fuck out of powerlifting until you know who they are, right? Because you can't know what we're doing now if you don't know what's happened before, right? So it starts with the history of sports science, physical education, and physical fitness, and then it gets into the history of periodization, where it really started, and then like, you know, the Cold War and all the social implications and stuff like that. And then into like the fundamentals of periodization. From there, we'll get into more of the physiological training pieces, the biomechanics, and then eventually I want to get into the theory, the bridging the gap between the theory, and then how to make it authentic to you. Because like what I was saying before, like for me, every program can work if it's following the principles and you're adjusting appropriately, right? It's pretty simple. But like for me, what became much easier was once I had an authentic program to me that obviously followed those principles. And now it's just understanding the nuance of those, right? So now you're getting into the weeds of the minor details of how to make it even better. And I think what you get into a lot is, let me try this program and then this program and then this program. And you never get good at dealing with being in the weeds at those minor details of coaching, the like real nuance of it. So I wanted to start with really broad and then get really narrow. And I'll just keep adding stuff to it. Like I'm going through like, I had taught at some schools for a while. So like I had all my textbooks from grad school and stuff. So like I'm going through chapters and just taking notes, putting them together, putting videos. I'll put assignments up there. If people want to write programs and get some feedback type of thing, I'll do that. Like I want to make it as interactive and as affordable and accessible as possible. It's $20 a month. Like I could charge way more for it, but I want more people to do it so that we have just like a greater knowledge base of a field in general. I mean, I think that's how you push the professionalism of it, right? Like the first strength coach was an actual physician. So it started with a broad type of medicine, and now it's anybody with a fucking Instagram account and a half decent total. So we're going in the wrong direction. So, but I want those people to have a place to go that's just
right,
where they can learn that information, and our field can just be a little bit better. Even if it's, even if I make a small little fucking dent, just that's all that matters, you know.
The idea is you can't keep people from getting in the field, but you can't help educate the people who get in the field. So instead of just being upset about it, you can do something to help them have a better understanding of it. So I think that's awesome. I'll link it in the show notes. I don't know who actually clicks on that stuff. I very rarely do personally. But if you want to check it out, link is in the show notes. Justin, what are you up to? What do you have going on? New episode of the podcast just released yesterday.
First of the month, Josh. Yeah.
First of the month.
Yep. So the podcast is out on the first of the month. So you can listen to all the, whatever. I just make it up. I literally don't. I'll just sit there and say, I'll talk about this week or this month, whatever. So what have I got? I've got, I'm training or coaching and training the athletes. We've got competition coming up. I was in Madrid a few weeks ago doing, I work with a CrossFit coach called Nathan Spurred, and he has a company called Bird Box Weightlifting, Bird Box Coaching rather. And we've developed a in-gym seminar for CrossFit coaches because there's a difference between exercise instruction and coaching. Mm-hmm. And we feel that perhaps it leans towards more exercise instruction because of the nature of, X-Play, CrossFit, whatever. And there is space for coaching. So that's what, we've started. We've got, 10, 15 seminars sold out through Europe and stuff. We're perhaps going to be taking that in the States next year, and all things being equal. So that's a sort of, that's non-weightlifting stuff. That's coaching. I've got my own coach mentorship that I run. If coaches want to get in touch with me, I take them through my own seminar 1-to-1. I'm looking to do one in the gym soon, and I'll advertise that out. But I like to help and develop coaches. I fucking love coaches. You know, coaches are great. They're who we are. I've got my athletes. I get plenty of athletes, you know, applying to be interviewed and such. I don't need any more. I like coaches. I want to help as many fucking coaches as I can. Speak about coaching, talk about training, talk about all of the things that we have to assist our athletes with and ourselves. Because, you know, the main thing about any of this is who I am, who you are. You know, what to do is straightforward if you apply yourself and you're skilled and you have an aptitude for the fucking business. Who you become, who you are, what you demonstrate, that's way more challenging. You know, if you're not ready for that bit. And, you know, like the language, paying attention to how you react. And I was going to say earlier, if anybody is in reaction to anything that we've said, then send me your reactions. I'd like to find out why you get offended by, you know, something. Like, that's an important part of humility, is to not be reactive. And this world, I fear, trains people to be reactive and offended instead of understanding and compassionate, because people can have an opinion. You can have, like, for example, you're talking about the Shaco experience that you had for 3 years. Well, it taught you to find individuality in your own coaching style. And I'm pretty fucking sure if you sat down with Boris, if he's still alive, he would go fucking great. Have I come back in? I just darted out. He would go fucking great on you, because that's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be copying his style. It's his style that was developed in a very unusual, should we say, authoritarian regime, whereby athletes had to turn up and their fucking food was stipended, and they wouldn't get any fucking food or money or whatever it is. Well, ours volunteer to come in. So the nature of, British people, Americans or Europeans, we're not the Eastern Bloc, so we're not that sort of thing. We have to develop our own styles. And as soon as you understand laws and principles and mechanics, you make your own programs. I don't give a fuck what you call it. All these names for programs, it's just names. Like, I've looked in through all that, you know, to look at for the name conjugate, and it says something like conjugated, but it doesn't say it's called the conjugate program. And I've looked for some, you know, the linear program or the undulating program. It doesn't say any of that in there, right? When you look at the old Rush, it doesn't. We've just given it fashionable words that don't really mean shit. Donnie said to me once, all programming is conjugated, all programming is linear, and it all undulates. It's every fucking thing. And if you stick to one thing, you get dogmatic and you get protective over that. Expand yourselves. Look at how your programs flow. But again, if we know all things can work, then it's not the programming. It's got to be something else. It's you and I. It's the humans. It's the athletes. It's the interactions, the relationships. It's the resilience, the consequence, the fortitude, the belief. The human side of it makes greatness. The program, well, whatever. Do what you like.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a better way to wrap this show up. For everyone who is listening, if you made it this far, again, sometimes we always have to pose that question when the shows run an hour and 45 minutes. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, kind of wherever else, but go follow Justin, go follow Kevin, KW Cann, Willpower Weightlifting, and we will catch you guys next week on another episode of the podcast.